All right, so this is a re-upload. I did not like the first take of the original video on knife angles, so we're back again. Today's my sick day. I feel slightly motivated. So people really didn't seem to like my take on you can put whatever knife angle you want on a knife as long as you can maintain that angle. I got all sorts of comments about people saying that if you're going to do if you're going to sharpen a Japanese knife, you got to make sure you put a 15-degree angle or a 12-degree angle or 11-degree, whatever. And this is not true.
Sharpen your knives but don't know what angle to sharpen them to? Here's a few rules of thumb that'll help you out. 25 to 30 degree angle inclusive will do well. For your pocket knives that you're going to carry on yourself regularly, you'll want to be between 20 and 25 degrees. Now when you get into kitchen knives, you're going to want to go steeper. That's going to be between 15 and 20 degrees. A Western style knife will be sharpened at that 20 degree. It's a little bit wider spine on that knife. And then your Eastern style Japanese will be at about 15.
The video you just saw was of somebody you would take their advice of, right? They are speaking knowledgeably. They have the appropriate garb. They have a whole channel dedicated to knife sharpening, and what they're saying is factually correct. However, it's just bad advice. So the problem I have with this advice is the audience that it's given to. New sharpeners have no idea what a 12 degree, 11 degree, 15 degree, 20 degree angle is just by like visually looking at it. I mean, unless they're like some type of trig nerd, which, you know, most knife sharpeners have no idea. So the most damage I've ever caused to one of my knives was when I kind of blindly trusted the advice of one of these knife guys when they were like, oh, I had a 15-degree Japanese knife, but I dropped it down to like a 12 degree or an 11 degree. And, you know, man, the sharpness really took off from there. Like it was like, you know, scary sharp. And so me being the new sharpener and wanting to have the sharpest knife possible, I followed that advice. And I wound up actually just damaging the face of my knife. It kind of got all scratched and smudged. And by the way, I made a video on how to fix this. If this has ever occurred to you, if you blindly follow the advice of some knife nerd online and you damage your knife, well, this may be the video for you. Or maybe it's over here. I don't know. So this comment here where somebody said too many angles, too many knives or something like that, is actually a very good comment. It's one of my favorite comments I've gotten so far because it's true, right? There's so many knives out there with so many different angles put on them. And this is basically what I think of when I sharpen a knife. I can put whatever angle I want on this knife as long as I can consistently maintain it. That's the most important thing. Consistently maintaining an angle is more important than the degree of the angle you put on the knife.
Start with our knife at 90 degrees to the stone. So for Japanese knives, we want a 15-degree angle. We start with 90, half of that's 45, and a third of that is about 15 degrees. Not the most precise way, but as long as you keep a consistent angle, that's the most important thing.
I will say that to the high heavens, and I will die on that hill. Metaphorically, of course. Now, I already know that there's going to be people who just really can't get this through their skull. Like they just really are stuck on this. If I have a Japanese knife, it's 15 degrees. If I have a German knife, it's 20 degrees. You know, that's fine. You could think that way. And eventually you will be able to maintain those angles. But you can put whatever angle you want as long as you can maintain that angle. And if you can maintain an angle, no matter if it's like 18 degrees, 23 degrees, 9 degrees, if you can maintain that angle, you will have a more consistent edge and you will have a sharper edge. So that's why I always say it has nothing to do with your knife, your stone, anything like that. It's everything to do with your technique. Which brings me to the jig or the guide or some type of assistance while sharpening. Most people will use a set of like pennies or little coins in order to set the angle that they're going to be sharpening at. There's nothing wrong with that.
Best thing to do is to get 3 coins, just using quarters. Lean your knife up against the quarters like this. This is the angle that you want to sharpen your knife at, like this.
I've seen people actually keep their thumbs on the stone as they sharpen and kind of just wear at their thumbs while wearing down the edge. If you want to do that, that's fine. I personally don't want to. That's pretty uncomfortable. And I've also seen people like buy those little plastic like knife angles to kind of sit on the block and you kind of move it. I've seen jigs. I've seen like these little magnetic ones. Some of them are pretty cool, but I can't really speak to any of them because I never really used them. I was like determined to get my technique good enough to where I didn't need like a jig or a guide or anything like that. But the idea of having a jig or a guide or a, whatever to kind of keep your knife at that consistent angle is a good one, because there's a very common flaw in the new knife sharpeners technique, which I've coined as wobbling. Now, wobbling is when you take your knife and you're moving it back and forth across a stone, but you're also moving the knife spine up and down as the blade travels across the stone, like back and forth. This like changing of the knife spine also changes the angle that you're sharpening at and will lead to inconsistencies during sharpening. So you're basically just sabotaging the work that you're trying to put in, if that makes sense. Now, this is a very subtle and fatal flaw in the new knife sharpeners technique, and it's one that, will lead to a lot of frustration as well. This is why I made a video about not mimicking pro sharpeners technique. It is more important for you to get a consistent angle and find a grip, movement or whatever that will make you comfortable so that you can maintain that angle. So basically, don't do the double stroke front back very quickly. I suggested to do like a single pass by like moving your body as opposed to moving your arms, because moving your arms can introduce more inconsistencies in your sharpening. And honestly, like that really did help my sharpening a decent amount. This is kind of one I've always been kind of, timid in trying to share with people, but I also switched from like a medium grit stone, like a 1000 plus stone, to a low grit stone. Like I've gone all the way down to like 320, 400. It's much faster and you get more feedback. The reason I'm like timid to share this with like new sharpeners especially is because low grit stones obviously remove more material, so therefore you can kind of make more mistakes like faster with the low grit stone. So I would probably tell new sharpeners to kind of stick with the medium grit stone, like what most people do. Like most people will recommend like that combo 1000, 6000 grit stone, which, to each their own, I guess. I've never used the combo stone, especially not 6000, because that's just like overkill. What was the point I was trying to make? The faster you finish your sharpening session, the less chance you can introduce like wobbling into your technique. So therefore, this should lead to more consistency. But this is coming from somebody who has sharpened quite a bit of knives. So I know what I'm looking for. I know the speed I can do, stuff like that. New sharpeners aren't really there yet, so they really should just stick with the 1000 grit stone until they can kind of get more comfortable. Every new skill is going to be frustrating no matter what it is. You just have to kind of enjoy the journeys and kind of really look for the small moments, really enjoy the small moments when you the first moment that you get a really nice edge, the first moment you like learn how to remove a burr, the first moment where you do one of those crazy tricks you may see, on Instagram, like where you take a knife and you cut a leaf or something like that. Like the footage you're seeing right now is of one of my favorite knives, and I didn't like stress over putting a special angle on it at all. I basically sharpened what I was comfortable with maintaining. I couldn't tell you what angle that is. Maybe it was 15, maybe it was 12. I don't really know. But as you can see, it's quite sharp. It's pretty cool. So with that being said, again, knife sharpening is a journey, right? It's something that you have to kind of experience for yourself. Don't be afraid to fail, right? A way to kind of make failing like softer, I guess, but to fail as hard is to find a knife that doesn't have a bunch of designs and features on it, so that you're able to practice like going too low, or so that you don't have the fear of like, I'm gonna completely screw up my knife. The first knife I sharpened on was this Tojiro VG10 Nakiri. It was a great knife, still is a great knife. But I was able to get all of my technique worked out using this knife, because as you can see, it doesn't have any like crazy designs. It's practically flat on its face. And it's a really nice steel to sharpen. Now, obviously this would be a more expensive first knife to have, especially to learn how to sharpen on. So maybe you could find something that's similar. Now, the checklist for this would just be, again, no crazy patterns, practically flat, and is a good steel to sharpen with. Find a beater knife, right? Find a beater knife that when you start sharpening with it, it feels good to sharpen with. When I first bought my Tojiro, it was like maybe 50 bucks, I think, which for me was pretty cheap because I knew like I was going to be using this knife forever. You know, back then, like Japanese knives were kind of giving them away. So, and since then, like the prices have gone up. So I don't really know what this Tojiro costs now, but you can find something, you know, similar. It doesn't have to be a Japanese knife to learn how to sharpen on. So knife sharpening should be pretty, I would even say therapeutic, right? Whoever came up with the adage, you know, no thoughts, head empty, must have been a knife sharpener, because you're only really engaging, you know, your basic reptilian brain when you're sharpening. And so if you are like finding yourself overthinking and kind of getting stressed out, you probably should stop sharpening and maybe walk away a little bit, or just switch up your technique. You know, instead of doing the double passes, try the single passes. Again, I made a video on this already, so if you're interested in that, be sure to check it out. All right, so with that being said, if you like the video, be sure to like it. And if you want to see more, subscribe.
Hey, what'd you go to, Austin?